So we are back in the Gospel of John, still with the interactions between Jesus and Pilate. And this is, of course, more extensive in John than the other Gospels. So John is bringing this out for a reason, and we're probably going to be getting into a little bit of that today, at least with the end of the chapter of 18.
I think we're on chapter 18 still.
Yeah. So last week when we were looking through this, we were dealing with Jesus' statements that he is a king. Well, it's in the Greek, it could be taken as a statement or a question from Pilate. So Jesus says, "You say that I'm a king," whereas Pilate is still kind of. But Jesus says, "You say that I'm a king, but in fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth." And then we dealt with quite a bit of time with Pilate's question, "What is truth?" And me being an amateur philosopher, yes, you can spend quite a bit of time on that question. It is one of the core objects for the branch of philosophy, epistemology, which is the foundation of knowing. Also quite a bit with metaphysics, but I digress. Okay. So we'll just wrap up with the last few verses before we head on to chapter 19. So could somebody please read John chapter 18, verses 38 to 40?
"What is truth?" Pilate asked. With this he went out again to the Jews and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him. But it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part in a rebellion.
So after Pilate asks what is truth, he goes out to the Jews yet again. So he's already out there wondering what on earth they want, because they're not exactly specific with their charge against Jesus. They say that he did something, and Pilate knows that he must have done something, but he doesn't exactly know what. So since he was talking with Jesus, and one of the main charges that was brought against Jesus is that he's leading a rebellion, claiming to be a king, and now Jesus says, "Well, my kingdom's not of this world." Pilate goes, "Okay, but that doesn't do anything against Caesar, so what do I care? Just have your own spiritual kingdom there, and just pay taxes." And Jesus, of course, did say, like just a few days earlier before this point, pay taxes to Caesar. So why would Pilate care? Anyway. So Pilate doesn't think Jesus has really done anything against the law. And Jesus just already admitted just a few verses earlier where he says, "My kingdom's not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest." And it's like, yeah, there's no army that Jesus was raising. He's not trying to get armed troops anywhere. So again, why would Pilate care? So if anything, Jesus would actually be beneficial for Pilate, because he knows the Sanhedrin, the ruling religious body of the Jews, don't like the guy, and they also oppose Pilate every now and again. So if Pilate really wanted to stick it to him, he'd just release Jesus and go, "There you go, let's have a thorn in your side, guys." So, like, there's no good reason for Pilate to have him. So he goes out to the Jews, and he just makes a deep, very emphatic statement. "I find no basis for a charge against him." So in the Greek, it has the first person singular pronouns for I, and Greek verbs, they don't need pronouns in order to function because that's already assumed in them. So when Pilate has this, like he is meaning some sort of emphasis, so you can translate that as, "I myself find no basis for a charge against him."
As ruler, why would he let it go on? Why wouldn't he just? There's no basis, go away.
Well, when you wake up in the morning and you find a mob outside your door, you kind of have to do something.
But wasn't that his job, kind of to control the Jewish mob? Rather than give it to him?
Well, to a degree, yes. Judea is one of the problem places in the Roman Empire. And throughout its history, it always has been. If you actually look to kind of the history of the Roman Empire, as well as the different inner workings of and treaties and other things, as the Roman Empire expands, there's only a few areas, and it's always close to the borders, where you have particularly rebellious people. And there's the Jews, there's the Germans, go Saxons. Actually, yeah, the Germans actually stopped the Roman advance in Europe. They did they took down 3 legions about 20 or so years before this point in time. So they took down 3 legions, and when the Roman Empire, for like all of Europe and North Africa, they only have less than 30 legions. So the Germans took down 1/10 of the Roman regular fighting force. Yeah, the Romans never got past that point in Germany. Anyway, so and keep in mind, like, it takes a lot of time to train that many soldiers and find people willing to be soldiers for that period of time, and the Roman military is dependent on kind of fresh troops, people who've been in the army for at least a few years, and then you also have those who are fighting veterans, those who've been there for much longer than 10-15 years. So that's Pilates, Hastati, and Percabes. So to actually get a proper legion, it takes a couple decades, if that, if not more. So Rome is has a bit of a shortage on manpower. They only have 1 legion in the territory. They can, and they will, in about 30 some years after this point in time, they will bring those forces to basically lay low the Jews. But Jews have always been a huge annoyance, so it's a lot better to try to pacify these people than to try to bring in extra fighters. Or to borrow Cicero, how does that saying go? A disadvantageous peace is always better than a just war. Cicero is also Roman. 1st century BC. Anyway. So Pilate, yeah, he's poked and prodded them a number of times, but he doesn't really want any more animosity than there is now. And since there's this Jesus guy, well, if he again, Jesus just admitted that he doesn't have any army or troops or anybody to lead a rebellion. So if Pilate gets rid of the guy, there's also not really a downside for him. Presumably, anyways. Well, at the beginning of chapter 19, Pilate will have a rude awakening, but presumably at this point in time, this is just some nut. Get back to the statement. So he says no basis for a charge against him. A more literal understanding would be kind of a no just cause. So he finds no reason or guilt. Like there's he doesn't really give terminology for a legal challenge, a charge, a legal charge. So he's more saying I find no just cause against him. Anyways, so I also want to point out that this is the first of 3 times that Pilate says that he finds no just cause against Jesus, that there is no reason for him to accuse Jesus. So when Pilate is mentioning this 3 times, what does that remind you of? Usually,
Denied Jesus 3 times.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
there we go. So,
What was that?
Peter denied him 3
Helga
Right.
said
Right.
Jesus denied Jesus 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, said Peter denied Jesus 3 times. What am I saying?
Right.
I could listen to another recording to figure out what I said. Anyways, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. So you have Peter, a Jew, who's been wandering around with the Messiah for a few years now, also made the grand confession just around a couple of weeks ago that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. But now this Gentile, with no affiliation with Jesus, who's also going to stab Jesus in the back, pretty much. He's saying, yeah, he's not guilty. 3 times. So Pilate, the Gentile, is nominally acting more righteous than Jesus' own disciples. So if you look at Peter and Judas, yeah. Okay. So,
Pastor, do you know what the main criteria was in those days for someone to be crucified? What would they have had to been guilty of? Like murder or,
rebelling against the government.
oh, like treason?
Treason or armed rebellion, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is supposed to be the most severe crime that the Romans have available. So it goes with the most severe
Punishment.
to take that you can have against the government. So when you have the thieves crucified on the cross either side of Jesus, like it is mentioning that they're being crucified for thievery, but most likely there's something far more serious going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they were trying to steal from a treasury somewhere or something like that.
Well, I was gonna say that in one sense, Pilate was maybe acting more uprightly, but on the other hand, weren't they both just trying to protect themselves?
Sorry. So Peter and Judas trying to protect
No,
themselves?
Peter and Pilate.
Oh, Peter and Pilate trying to protect themselves. To a degree, yeah.
Yeah.
Pilate, though, is kind of wavering between his own self-interest and the interests of justice. Because him as governor, if he really wanted to, like he could fudge the details and just execute Jesus no problem, which he more or less does. But the hesitation is what gives us pause, because if he's refusing this multiple times, and he will be, then what motivation does he have for this? And we could try to put forth, well, he's trying to be a thorn in the side of the Sanhedrin because he doesn't like those guys, he doesn't like the high priest. But why would he be as resistant to this as he is, if he's eventually going to cave in? And why would he also readily present the option of trying to release Jesus, which he's about to do with Barabbas? So, so why would he try to go to such an extent for this individual?
Was
Sorry,
it mentioned?
Helga's trying to say something.
Was it in John mentioned
Laura,
that?
Laura, Helga's trying to say something.
Oh, sorry. Can I speak up so I can hear people? Just,
Okay,
I didn't hear her.
I have a feeling, maybe I'm not convinced, but I have a feeling that Pilate might not have occupied his thoughts with the persona of Jesus, but he might have heard about the miracles he performed. And I think a certain hesitation or reflection of his on what he has accomplished or done might have been a reason for his hesitation to a certain degree.
I think to a certain degree, yes. So Helga was just saying, for anybody who couldn't hear that
Yeah.
over the microphone, was, well, Pilate was somewhat, could have been somewhat aware of Jesus' miracles and other teachings, so that Pilate would be sympathetic to Jesus as, let's say, a miracle worker and a rabbi, a teacher of the people. Now, the hesitation I have with that is, how close is Pilate paying attention to Jesus' ministerial career? So the vast majority of what Jesus has done has been in the region of Galilee, the vast majority. He's also been in Samaria, so this is outside of Pilate's jurisdiction. He doesn't look after those areas. So he most likely doesn't know a lot of what Jesus Christ has done. John, throughout his gospel, he really tries to focus on Jerusalem. So almost all of John takes place in Jerusalem, which is actually just a relatively small portion of Jesus' ministry.
Yeah.
So we do know that Jesus has done some interesting things around Jerusalem, but have these things really come to the ears of Pilate? And I'm going to also hesitate to say yes, because Pilate doesn't really reside in Jerusalem. Pilate resides the vast majority of the time in a place called Caesarea Maritima on the coast. So he doesn't really know anything about Jesus, just by virtue of he doesn't really care about the Jews, and he'll be looking after kind of the everyday ministerial affairs. Now, what I had talked about in a couple of previous Bible studies is, most likely, since Pilate is in Jerusalem for the feast, most likely he's at least heard of Jesus' triumphal entry on Sunday, where Jesus comes into the city on a donkey. Like that could have very well have come to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be that this is a guy who's highly revered by the people, and again, Pilate doesn't know why. Because one of his earlier questions, a few verses before what we're looking at, is, well, am I a Jew? Do I know all your guys' religion and everything? Like, I don't care.
Pastor,
So
in
he
John,
probably doesn't know the full significance of these things, quite unfortunately. But yeah, he at the very least, he knows that Jesus does have some backing from the people, and that he is being accused of having too much backing, so the ability of being made king of the Jews. The stuff somewhat related to miracles will come up in the next few verses. So this is going to be somewhat revealed to Pilate, because they're going to claim that Jesus said that he was the Son of God. So Pilate will keep an ear out for that. But at this particular moment, no.
Pat, as this before Pilate's wife spoke to him?
Oh, I'll be getting to that relatively shortly, but we don't have an exact timestamp on that. However, yeah, I will be mentioning this as we kind of go through some of the details.
Okay.
Because that mention of his wife suffering in a dream because of him. I'm sorry, I have to remember which verses.
Is that
Yeah.
mentioned in
Yeah,
John?
that comes up only in Matthew.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, Matthew is not the most chronologically linear in his description of these things, as we find as we try to compare John with the other Gospels, or even Matthew, Mark, and Luke with each other. So it seems that yeah, this could have happened at a couple different times. But my hypothesis is that this is coming up just shortly. So before I switch over, any other thoughts or concerns on verse 38 in chapter 18? Because we're going to have a huge division between this and the next verse.
Would it throw a monkey wrench into this conversation if I mentioned predestinations?
Possibly. Depends what your question on predestination is.
I just think I know we've studied predestination, and I know there's all kinds of thoughts on it, but I just thought of that maybe Pilate was predestined.
Well, it's absolutely predestined that he would be the one to do this, and there's kind of a reference to it, not a declaration of it, but something implicit about this, and this is coming up again in the next chapter, where Jesus mentions that Pilate would not have authority over Jesus if it was not given to him by above. So we do know that Pilate was brought up for specific purposes. But yeah, I don't think that we want to go so far as to question that he has the ability to, or so the inability to actually carry out his actual
Okay.
desire. Because then you would be saying that Pilate is now, if you will, a puppet of God, and then God the Father is the one who's trying to ensure that Jesus Christ is going to the cross, rather than people actually reject him. It is God the Father forcing people to reject Jesus,
Okay.
which is itself going to be a problematic statement, because then that means that God the Father is condemning people to hell because he's forcing people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
I
the
knew it
slippery
was.
slope with predestination.
Okay. Thank you. I just had that thought.
Yeah, well, and to a degree, like we could actually even bring that in, where and the best case for this in all of Scripture is with Pharaoh and Moses, because there's different passages where God is saying that I have raised up Pharaoh for the purpose of displaying my power to the nations, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart. But if you read the words carefully, because Moses goes up to him, I think it's 12 times. I think it's the first 5 where there's a comment that Pharaoh hardens his own heart. And then I think the next one is God hardened his heart, and then it's Pharaoh, and then it's God for a couple times, and then yeah. So Pharaoh is making the choice initially that he is going to reject all these things, and I hesitate to even use the word choice with this, but Pharaoh himself is rejecting the word of God. But since he's hardening himself so much to the word of God, God just further hardens Pharaoh's heart so that the fullness of what wishes to happen occurs. So it's not as though Pharaoh himself is being coerced, like this is what he wants to do, but God just moves Pharaoh forward in what he wants to do. So this is also why we would pray to God something to be effective. Lead us not into temptation, because we're not afraid that God's going to tempt us, but we do know that there are temptations that our hearts desire, and we don't want God to just place those temptations right in front of us.
Yeah.
Okay. So interesting thought.
I was thinking about the pecking order. You're talking Pharaoh, so Pharaoh would be equivalent to king. Yeah, I guess.
Technically emperor. The Hebrew doesn't really have differentiation between leadership positions, like not to a high degree. So it calls him king all the time, but technically speaking, he would be an emperor because Egypt had a whole bunch of different peoples underneath them.
No, in Pilate's day, so there was a king and governors and high priests, and what's the pecking order?
Oh,
No.
this is going to be okay. All right. Let's see if I can try and make sense of. I think we talked about this a little bit last time. So
I'm sorry if I'm taking you off course here.
yeah, that's kind of what we do. And then I'll put in some water here. So this is the Mediterranean Sea, Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, and you have the Dead Sea over here. Okay. So we were talking about this a little bit last time. Yeah, last time. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. But you have the division of things kind of like this, where you have King Herod over here, and he has direct control over this area. Then you also have Pontius Pilate, and he has direct authority over this area. So he's the governor, if you will, or prefects, or I think his title is actually technically consul. But as for the Roman Empire, and I'll use a good Roman red, it has this territory more. So all this is actually under Roman jurisdiction. King Herod is a client king. He has authority only by virtue of Rome allowing it. But he's somewhat indirect towards the leadership of the empire. So basically, he's allowed to rule this empire at the Romans' direction, as long as he pays the requisite taxes. Pontius Pilate, on the other hand, is governor, is an appointee from Rome itself. So they're saying, you govern this province and also keep an eye on this guy. But you have control over here, get taxes, implement control. So you'd have the Roman legion that's in this area. So there's one Roman legion for basically this huge area over here. So not just Israel, but that huge area. So they have a Roman legion base, and I'm trying to remember exactly where it is. I think it's actually over here. So Jerusalem is over here. So I think the Roman legion's over here. But they have one Roman legion that's under Pilate's control, and then he can raise it up and bring it against King Herod if he ever needed to. But all this is under the control of Caesar, and at this time it's Tiberius Caesar. And he is the Roman emperor. So an emperor is the one who has control over multiple kingdoms and peoples.
The king is under the emperor then.
Yeah.
And so Pontius Pilate would be on par with king. As far as control or power?
Not really, but I don't think I should go into all of those politics to really try to describe that. We could say roughly equivalent.
Question.
Yes.
King Herod. So would it be correct to say the Romans left him there as long as he played along and represented their interests? And as long as they received the taxes, was there ever a king in the area that is now being taken care of by Pontius Pilate? Was there ever a Hebrew king in that area?
King Herod isn't even Hebrew king.
Okay.
As he's an Idumean, or if you will, Edomite.
Okay.
So the first King Herod the Great, the one who tried to kill Jesus as a baby,
Yeah.
he had control of this whole area because he basically made a deal with Rome. Hey, I want to conquer the Jews. Stay out of it, and I'll give you a whole bunch of money. And Rome went, oh yeah, we want tribute. This sounds good. Okay, do it. And then Herod took over this whole area. And he kind of acted like a Jew among the Jews, acted like the Roman among the Romans, even though he was neither. He again was an Edomite. But when he died, he left control of the territory to his sons. One died, one was incompetent, so Pilate took over a lot of their territory. Herod took over some of it, but now you just have the two. So, yeah, he was competent enough that he could take care of this small territory. But Pilate, yeah, he had direct control by Rome over this place. So the Jews haven't had an actual king for, well, decades. Trying to think when was the last time they actually had an official king. Might not have been since the Maccabean Wars, just a couple centuries before this. Because even then, the king at that time basically betrayed the entirety of the nation. So why would you follow that guy? Yeah, makes some sense. So I'll also just mention. So Caesar was actually a proper name. So this was from Gaius Julius Caesar. So he was the first main Caesar that people know. He was the first. Well, he was his title was technically emperor for life. So when he was executed, he appointed an heir. This was Octavian Caesar Augustus, because Augustus, even though he was a nephew of Caesar, he was adopted in. So Augustus took the name of Caesar there, but Caesar isn't actually the family name. The family name is actually Julius. But Caesar was the one that people knew him by, because also the first name, what's called the praenomen. So that would be Gaius for Gaius Julius Caesar. That's like having one of 12 names, so nobody really went by that name. So you either go by the family name of Julii, or you try to go by Caesar. So Caesar kind of got to be the adopted name. So then this was eventually became a title. Yeah, and this is where you get things like Kaiser, which would be yeah, because they were taking that from the Romans, because you got the Holy Roman Empire that was crowned by the Pope, trying to resurrect the believing Roman Empire in the East, but that didn't exactly work out. But anyways, then you have Kaiser, and I'm trying to remember the other ones. But yeah, there's a few different titles that kind of get derived from. Oh right, yeah, Tsar actually comes from it. Moscow is supposed to be the third Rome.
Oh, Czar.
Never really did. They tried, but if you're wondering what the second Rome was, it's Constantinople. There. Okay. Make an executive decision. Now we're going to verse 39. We're actually doing comparing between them. So you notice that if you're looking at your text, if you're using a red letter Bible, it's all red letter. Oh, sorry, it's not all red letter. But if you're using the printed text, you'll find that there's a quotation mark there partway through verse 38. There's a quotation there at the end of 39, and there's no break there. However, if you actually look at the other Gospels, we're finding that there is actually a very significant break. So John, what John has done is he's basically collapsed time, because his focus is between what's going on with Pilate and Jesus. So that's John's focus, but we know that there's actually stuff that happens in between. So if people wanted to look, I'll just open this up for people in the room, people online. You might be able. Now, you're probably not too capable of doing this, but this is a synopsis. It looks at all four Gospels alongside each other if it can. And we notice there's a fair bit of stuff with John there. So that's where we've somewhat come to. But then we notice that there's a message here in Luke. And Luke goes on for a bit of time, and he's the only one who really records this. And then we come to the Barsabbas over here. So we know that there's a significant break. So I will let people look at the synopses.
I wonder if my dad had that book
People can look
and that it went to Tolkien or someone.
No.
I don't think I didn't get it.
so in so what's going on as the Gospel of Luke is letting us know is in between Pilate going out and him suggesting Barabbas, sorry, is he's when he goes out, the crowd is saying that he is Galilean, and then Pilate goes like, "Oh, great! I can get out of this whole mess because Galilee's in the jurisdiction of King Herod, not him." So he sees a way out for it, and it's not quite like a lot of the modern laws where you were convicted and tried in the place where you committed a crime. This would be extradition where Jesus is being sent over to Herod. Now Herod himself, since he's somewhat his veneer is a Jew. Again, he's not exactly a Jew, he's an Edomite. But since he's trying to act the part of a Jew, he is in Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. So Pilate decides, I'm going to send Jesus over there. And Jesus arrives, but Jesus has nothing to say to this guy. Herod doesn't really have anything over Jesus either. So again, he's the wrong nationality to have authority over a Jew, especially in Jewish territory. And Herod has no intention of actually trying to understand anything. So what Herod does is he tries to get Jesus to perform miracles as parlor tricks. So he's looking at this for entertainment. But what would you say the point of all Jesus' miracles have been?
Not for parlor tricks. To have people believe in his divinity.
To a degree, yes. So the Gospel of John frames it more specifically as this is the witness of God the Father. Basically all the miracles have been so that the people understand who Jesus is. So if Jesus is just speaking himself, like he could be a rabbi, people could ignore him. But if he's performing miracles, then he's saying that, well, not only am I witnessing about myself, but even God the Father is witnessing about me. So the two of us together as two witnesses, because you're supposed to gather 2 or 3 witnesses. So Jesus and the Father are witnessing to the authority of what Jesus Christ is saying. So Jesus is proclaiming, like, yes, I am, what I say is absolutely true. So the purpose of the miracles is, yes, of course, to guide people to faith, but specifically faith in Jesus being the only Son of God.
According to that, your diagram there is very timely.
Oh.
It says that Herod and Pilate became friends.
Yeah.
After this.
Yeah.
So it helps put it all together.
Yeah, they're kind of working in neighboring jurisdictions, but well, even here in the greater Victoria area, we like the different municipalities can't agree to come together as one city. So
Right.
good luck getting given rival authorities like this.
I'm confused now.
Okay.
What does CP verse 17 mean under Luke? And then I just went to look it up, and I don't have 17. It goes from 16 to 18.
Sorry, CP. Oh, it's in the footnotes. So some manuscripts.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Some manuscripts have this, some don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it's in brackets.
Okay.
I could also talk about manuscript, but that's gonna add an extra layer of complication to this. So in any case, yeah, Jesus is not willing to be a performing monkey in front of Herod. So Herod just makes fun of him and then sends him back to Pilate because what good is having this? And then Pilate apparently finds this somewhat humorous himself, and then he and Herod become friends. You see this sort of in the Book of Acts. Pilate doesn't come up by name in the Book of Acts, but you find that King Herod is able to do more in the Book of Acts than he might have in the Gospels. So the tensions between him and Rome are somewhat lessened. Now, Matthew, Gospel of Matthew, is the only one that mentions that Pilate's wife had a dream about Jesus and that Pilate shouldn't deal with the guy. So when does she actually tell him about this? It could actually be the case that when Pilate has Jesus sent off to Herod, so that's going to take, well, who knows how long that took, but let's say half an hour. That would have been ample enough time for Pilate's wife to come to him and say, "Oh, this is what I heard, like, or this is what I saw in a dream. Oh, you mean the Jesus guy came to you? Yeah, don't have anything to do with him." And then that can get Pilate somewhat scared. So I think this is the most likely time when that occurred, where Pilate has some downtime. He's not right there in a court that's in session. But yeah, hard to say. Hard to say. So any other?
So with all these doubts of his or hesitation, what pushed Pilate over the top?
What do you mean over the top?
Well, to agree to turn Jesus over. What was
Well,
the
we still
final
have
straw?
like half a chapter.
Okay, we're getting there.
Yes.
Slowly.
Can't just skip to the end. You have to go through all the different stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's nothing more about King Herod, what he's doing, going once, going twice. Okay. So we're back in the next verse in John. So there seems to be a break between verses 38 and 39 in chapter 18 of John, where you have Jesus sent off to Herod. So John, this isn't exactly what he cares about, because John is only looking at legitimate authorities. And quite likely, John doesn't see Herod as a legitimate authority, because Herod, again, is the wrong nationality to rule Jews. Similarly, like this would also be why John is the only one who talks about Annas as high priest, because the other guys, Caiaphas, his authority would be somewhat suspect if you have a living high priest, because the priesthood is supposed to go from father to son. Caiaphas is the son-in-law of Annas, and it's supposed to be transferred when the high priest dies. So this isn't exactly a legitimate transfer of power. So even though Caiaphas was acting the part of high priest, John goes more to Annas. So if there's doubts about King Herod being a legitimate king over the Jews, then why would John try to insert that? So that's the most likely explanation why he's not including this. Anyways, so he comes back. It could have been the case that this is after Pilate now hears the warning from his wife, and now he thinks, I need to somehow get rid of this Jesus God. So in verse 39, he's saying, well, it's your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of Passover. So, and I was very thankful for the commentary, which kind of pointed this out. I was saying that if Pilate is saying that I am releasing to you a criminal, a prisoner at this time, he's already tacitly admitting that Jesus is guilty without actually having declared that Jesus is guilty. So he gets to have Jesus release and have the crowd not be mad at him at the same time. So he's trying to solve the problem. Yeah, this doesn't really work well. In any case, now the curious thing is, and I was again indebted to the commentary on this point, that we don't really have information about there being a custom of releasing a prisoner at Passover. So the Bible is the only place where this is actually mentioned. So since all four Gospels are talking about this, it's not as though just one Gospel writer is saying, "Oh yeah, this happened here," because if one was mentioning it, that would be somewhat doubtful that this occurred. Well, not somewhat doubtful, but it would lead to some people to doubt that this actually occurred. But if all four Gospels are talking about this, then yeah, this was something that everybody knew happened at the time of Christ. So Romans do have records of releasing people on special occasions. Now Pilate said this was a Jewish custom. So that's a bit of an odd thing. So it could actually be a hybrid Roman Jewish custom where the Romans are like, yeah, sure, we'll release to you a prisoner on a special occasion. And then the Jews say, yeah, let's do it on Passover. And it could actually have even been an extremely recent and only short-lived custom. Maybe it was only in use when Pilate was governor, and he was only governor for a few years. Maybe that's why. But anyways, all that's hypothetical as to why we wouldn't find this specifically in other sources. But yeah, again, all four Gospels talk about it, so we can hold that it's true without a reasonable doubt. Anyway, now it seems to be that the choice of the prisoner is left up to the people, because Pilate could have just said, like, if it was under his authority to choose this, he could have just said, "It's your custom to release a prisoner to you, and now I'm releasing Jesus. There you go, bye," and just escape back into the Praetorium. But no, it's apparently left up to the people. Now, if you actually look at Mark, so in Mark 15, verses 6 to 14, like there's a lot of stuff that's kind of going on, and Mark has some background for that Barabbas is somewhat talked about before Jesus comes up as a prisoner to release, because yeah, if Pilate is saying, I want to release to you a criminal, well, would all the people immediately think of this one guy in prison, or would they think of the guy who's standing right there in front of them that they all spent the night trying to hound and kill? But in Mark's Gospel, it seems to be that because Mark 15 verse 8, so I'll just read this. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did, that is, release the prisoner that came to the feast. And just the earlier verse has Mark saying a man called Barabbas was in prison with insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. So it seems to be that there's multiple crowds going on here. Now, of course, there's the crowd that was coming from the palace of the high priest, and they were bringing Jesus to try and convict him with Pilate first thing in the morning. But from the wording in Mark here, it could be that there is a second crowd that was already formed around the governor's office. They were already there, because they wanted to have Pilate released to them a prisoner. So they staked this out. They were going to go there, and it seemed that they already had Barabbas in mind. So it wasn't that people spontaneously thought, "Oh yeah, well let's go with this guy." It might have been that there was a smaller crowd unaffiliated with all those trying to execute Jesus. And then this crowd was just like, "Oh wait, if you don't want Jesus, let's just pick Barabbas. Let's just pick Barabbas." And then they could have, and then the Sanhedrin could have heard that one. Yes, let's pick that guy because we want to kill Jesus. So let's pick that guy. So yeah, most likely there was a small little interest group already there, and they were able to convince the crowd. People are puzzling at their Bibles, so I don't know.
So insurrection would have been against the Romans.
Yeah.
And he committed murder during the insurrection.
I can't remember. I gave away my synopses. I can't remember which cross.
It's a move that says he was a murderer.
Okay. Well, no. There's one I think that says like he specifically murdered. It might have been Water Park. Anyways, so getting synopsis back. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember because there's one that kind of says that he's very hands-on. So among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection. Yeah. So Mark was saying that specifically Barabbas was the one who committed murder. Yeah.
Luke doesn't name Barabbas, who he says.
Yeah. He was arrested in insurrection and there was murder going on there. So Mark was the one who's like, no, yeah, he's a murderer. So that's why we have the readings side by side, so we can compare. It's like, oh, which details come up?
Not in Luke.
Oh, and Luke.
Yeah. And John, if you want to see John. Yeah, so it just says that he took part in the uprising. Doesn't give any other details. So it's an insurrectionist. And that could be because John doesn't need to include the idea of murder because he's just trying to point out the irony where Jesus is being presented to Pilate as an insurrectionist, as somebody trying to lead a rebellion against the government by claiming himself to be king. And here the people are trying to crucify Jesus based on this point. But now they're selecting Barabbas, who is trying to make himself king. It was like, yeah, let's choose this guy. So John is just very much trying to highlight the hypocrisy of the people at this point in time, just by showcasing Barabbas and Jesus side by side. Yeah. Insurrection. This would be primarily against the Roman government because they don't want to be ruled by Romans. Not that they would want to be ruled by an Edomite anyways. But if Barabbas is arrested in Jerusalem, then he would have been doing that against Pilate rather than Herod. Otherwise, like you would have a prisoner up there.
Releasing one prisoner at Passover, is there a connection to Passover itself? Like, are they going back to when their houses were passed over, or?
Nope.
Oh, just a.
No, yeah, as I was saying.
Custom.
Yeah, as I was saying before, like this doesn't really have a connection outside of the four gospels. We don't see written evidence specifically of a prisoner being released at Passover. So my best guess is that this is a hybrid Jewish Roman custom because Romans sometimes release prisoners on special occasions. So the Jews might have selected Passover, and this might have only been around when Pilate was in power. So that's my best guess. But we don't have anything declarative outside the four gospels. Okay. So, did you know? Well, this is another fun thing. Did you know that Barabbas isn't exactly a proper name?
What?
Here. Okay. Got Barabbas. Or is using a U here. It's using a U. Sorry. I'm trying to bring in Aramaic. Anyways. Okay. Doing the whole Greek ending on these things. At which point that should be an O, but anyways. So did you know this isn't exactly a proper name?
Because?
So, bar. You might have you noticed that there are quite a few names that appear with bar in
Like
Bibles.
Bar Jonah.
Yeah, that's because bar means son of.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Mark,
So
Ben,
yeah, so this already means or indicates that this isn't that person's, let's say, legal name, but is pointing to their heritage.
Oh.
So if you have Bar Jonah means son of Jonah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not Peter's name, but that's Bar Jonah. And he's the Peter who's son of Jonah. Or if you have more famously, because we only know him by this name, Bar Timaeus. He's just the son of Timaeus. So people who are pointing to Bar Timaeus, who was blind and Jesus healed him, yeah, we're not using his actual proper name. It's just that he's the son of Timaeus. So people most likely knew Timaeus, and then they're going, yeah, and this is his son. Remember, his blind son's like, oh yeah, okay. But even this is odd, because if we modify this a little bit,
Father.
The
you
ESV has it spelled B-A-S. Bar,
yes.
they have an A instead of a U.
That means father.
I'm looking at Greek again. Where we go? Yeah, well, it's an alpha in the Greek, so we got A there. Okay. I really want to put an I there because that makes more sense for the conjugation. But anyways, so if you have this actually does appear in the New Testament. Do you remember where, or at least what it means at that time?
I have a father. It means father.
Yeah. So this means father.
yeah.
Wow, that's weird.
I have a father.
So to just put a connecting word in there.
Son of God.
Son of the fallen.
What?
So what you're kind of going with, well, this is kind of a nonsense name because it was oh yeah, he's the son of who? Son of his father. Like, well, duh. But if this is coming up, well, actually, this could also be translated in a slightly different way. It could also be very possibly master if you're taking a very genial tone with whoever is your employer. You might say that he's your father in a certain sense, but most likely son of the father is a good translation of the name. Hard to say exactly what's being pointed at here. However, who do we know that Jesus is? He's
The son of the father.
son of
God.
the Father.
Right.
Yeah.
the one that we really know. So it could also be that just by using this name, the gospel writers are trying to point out, oh, hey, like there's the Son of God here, and people are choosing somebody else who obviously isn't the Son of God, rather than Jesus, who is the Son of the Father.
Okay.
This also gets more interesting when Matthew, and this is in 27, Matthew 27, verses 16 and 17 here. Yeah, so Pilate said, oh yeah, so this is a textual variation. So so you won't actually find it in your, you probably won't find it in your Bibles, but there's a textual variation. So in some manuscripts, some Greek manuscripts, they have Barabbas's first name as Jesus, that is Jesus.
I think that the name Jesus maybe been sort of common.
No, it's very common. It's Joshua. It's everything.
Right.
But again, this is Jesus Barabbas, Jesus, Son of the Father. So you got one guy who's leading rebellion and failed. You have another guy who's trying to promise you salvation and perform many miracles in the sight of all people. And the people choose which one.
Pick one. The rebellious murderer.
The
faker. Oh.
Yeah. So this also gets to be very interesting. So depending on like the translation I have, like the one that we have in the room for the NIV says that he was leading a rebellion. The one I was showing people online, because I can't get the specific version of the NIV online, is that he was leading an uprising. But what's more interesting is that the word actually used to describe him isn't exactly rebellion or stuff like that. It's actually referring to him as kind of a thief, or if you will, robber. Okay. So this actually appears elsewhere in the Gospel of John. Nope. Nope.
Mhm.
Actually, that phrase doesn't come up in John.
Okay.
Those are the other three Gospels. That's in a discourse that's not found in John.
Somewhere there is a mentioning like the thieves come by night, but
No. You're getting closer. Huh?
In the sheepfold.
Yes.
Yes.
What was
Yeah.
that?
So the thieves and the robbers, they don't go by the gate. They try to get in other ways in order to try and steal the sheep.
Yeah.
And now, who are all the sheep following out of Jesus or this Jesus?
Following the real one.
They're going after the thief and the robbers.
Yeah,
Like all
the people.
All the sheep are being fleeced by this guy. No, not that much.
So, Pastor, was there a guy that was really named Barabbas, or did they just call him Barabbas? Because
Or did he call himself that?
yeah.
It's like nickname.
Again, we don't know absolutely for sure, but this would be an extremely weird name for anybody to have. Because it's more or less a nonsense name or a self-evident name. Why would you be the son of the father? Every son would have a father. Like it doesn't make sense. So as for why this name is appearing, hard to say.
But nowadays, I don't think when people pick a name for their child that they want to know what the name means so much, whether they like the sound of it or whether it was someone else's name that they admired or was it a family name. Do you think that was any different back then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
In a word.
Yep. Anyways, so we have here The people choosing a robber to lead them to glory, who tries to steal the physical kingdom of Israel instead of being the actual doorway, as Jesus Christ is saying, because he's saying he's the door and thieves go the other way. So the people choose this guy over the actual door into the kingdom of God. Yeah. And kind of to put almost insult to injury, or at least point out the hypocrisy even more, Matthew and Mark, in their descriptions of this event, because John is very brief. John is very brief. Matthew and Mark point out that it's the high priests who are trying to stir up the crowds to vote for Barabbas instead of Jesus. So this then means that the high priests are calling people to follow a false Jesus, a false Messiah.
Essentially. So those priests, chief priests, they were concerned about their positions,
Yes.
weren't they?
Yes.
And they felt threatened
Yes.
by Christ.
Yeah.
And of course, the most biggest offense was that he claimed to be God. How dare he?
Well, I didn't care about that before. Like that only came up during the trial.
Well, they tried to stone him.
No, that was just the Jewish crowds. They weren't there. The chief priests weren't there.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just, the name, understanding the meaning of it, it's kind of weird because the people would have understood the meaning of it. And then it didn't make sense. Like,
Oh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, this is what we have. So
Boy, Pastor, I'm glad you know your Greek so well, because no one has ever pointed out this about Barabbas to me.
technically speaking, this is Aramaic, which is transliterated in Greek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
In any case, so this is one of the instances where Pilate, and I'll bring you back to the actual text so you can see it for yourself. This is one of the instances where Pilate is going, actually addressing Jesus by the title King of the Jews. So when people brought Jesus to Pilate, he doesn't really know who this guy is. He interviews him. Then Jesus says he reigns, he has a kingdom. So Pilate goes, so you're a king? And Jesus goes, you say that I am. And now Pilate, this is the first time that he's actually announcing that this is the King of the Jews. So Pilate is trying to release Jesus, one of the first times that he's trying to release Jesus. And he's referring to the King of the Jews, and the people reject him. You want to guess how many times they reject him?
3 times.
3! Of course.
Number of
So
the
Pilate tries to save him 3 times. The Jews reject him 3 times, just like Peter. That's showing that, yes, the fulfillment of John chapter 1, which Mel was mentioning earlier on, we have to teach ourselves John chapter 1 again. But Jesus came to his own, and his own did not accept him, but to those who did accept him, he gave the power to become children of God. So this is showing a rejection by the Jewish people, but Jesus will be welcomed by the Gentiles, at least nominally with Pilate. Pilate, yeah, there's iffiness as we continue to go through, but there is a willingness there that the people at this time do not have. And that's not to say that Jews can't be saved, because like the apostles themselves, they're Jews. Like there's other followers besides them. That there's over 120 by the time of Acts, just in Jerusalem. So Jews can be saved, and then they're preaching to other Jews there, and they're saving thousands. But a large proportion of the Jewish people reject their own.
Going back to the Barabbas.
Okay.
Would it just be a case of the people didn't know the guy's name? They knew he was the son of somebody, so that would be a way of it.
Well, this could also just be the moniker by which he goes by, but it could be that he's picking a name intentionally so that people don't actually go after his father, because he could be bar of so and so. So if he's leading rebellion, maybe he's just picking up another. Yeah.
Or
Hard to say.
Anonymous.
well, to be anonymous.
And then again, yeah, as people point out, like, even though in textual variants in Matthew, there's mention of him being called Jesus. Common is also a common name, so it's not like he would be readily recognized. This is also why Jesus is called the son of Joseph in a few passages, because they're trying to figure out which Jesus was it, or Jesus of Galilee or Nazareth. Yeah. So this is the Jesus from that podunk town, real small one over there near Galilee. No. Also keep in mind, this is the era of the poor picture, so they can't even draw a picture and say, this is the guy. Go by name. You have to go by name. Anything? Okay. So we did get through these 3 verses, but we also covered 2.5 verses because we spent so long on what is truth the last time. But we also talked a lot about some of the other gospels. So
We did.
We covered more than just a couple of verses there. So with what's going on now, Matthew and Mark, they have a statement, and we know that this is somewhat presumptuous based on the John text, because John doesn't say that Pilate is leading Jesus directly to the cross after this point. But in Matthew and Mark, they're basically saying that from this point on, after the release of Barabbas, that Jesus is going to be crucified. Oh, sorry, no, that Jesus is going to be crucified after the release of Barabbas. So it seems that it seems like they're saying that Pilate has already made up his mind at this point in time, but we know that from the John text, that he hasn't. He's still trying to release him. But they're basically saying that he's good as crucified, and this is also why I mentioned that Matthew probably isn't as chronologically linear as we might assume, because you have the John text to say that Pilate hasn't officially decided to crucify him just yet. In any case, Pilate has to go back to the drawing board, and he has to decide to do something. And for a standard crucifixion, you would be beaten beforehand. Well, I shouldn't even say beaten, I should scourge. So, beginning chapter 19 in John is then, or if you will, therefore then, it actually is it's a double introduction. So we're saying, as a direct consequence of this, Pilate decides to have Jesus scourged. Okay. So do people understand what that means? I'm going to guess no, because this has to do with ancient punishments. So
I think I know.
okay, how about?
Well, there's some kind of a whip with sharp things on the end that you hit them on the back and rip the flesh, something like that.
Yes. So that would be a standard scourging. And for Romans, it could be a single armed whip, or it could be multiple arms. And On the edge could be jagged rocks, broken seashells. Yeah, so sharp and jagged things that would be going into the flesh. And since you're really whipping the guy, that would go into the flesh. And those things would grab onto flesh and you'd rip them off. So, if you've ever seen Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, and that's going back a few years, if you've seen that, I have to say, like, it's really Catholic. It's really Catholic. They just go like, see how much blood and pain. Okay, but there's also a lot of love there. But anyway, yeah, Catholicism, when they look at that, they tend to go more towards, see how much Christ suffered for you. This is because of you and your sins. Anyway. So that movie is particularly bloody and stuff, but at least for the flogging scene, even though that is very bloody and jarring, that would actually be fairly accurate.
I guess we don't like to see it. It's
Nope.
bothersome.
Nope.
And I mean, I have not been looking forward to the story of the crucifixion because it's so horrendous.
Yep.
I've never seen it either, the movie.
And neither would I watch it. I just couldn't.
Oh, yeah, I think it's the, I'm trying to remember if it's R or NC-17. Because NC-17 is like, it's a step above R. I think it's only R. But I'm pretty sure it's one of the very few like faithful R-rated Christian movies. Because like, yeah, you wouldn't really have Christians doing so many different things that would warrant that type of rating. But yeah, when you're seeing Jesus torn apart and placed on a cross, the actor who plays him there, like, yeah, he also really suffered for that role. He caught hypothermia because he's in the wilderness and he's almost naked on a cross for hours at a time. He got struck by lightning twice.
Oh my.
Anyways, so he really understood suffering after that. And has a newfound appreciation. Well, I don't think it was newfound, but he has a different appreciation for Christ from a different angle now. Jim Caviezel also a Catholic. Yeah. But I remember when that movie came out, at my home church, I think that was 2004, around that time. At my church, the pastor, he was trying to get people to see that movie, so he was volunteering to take people in his van. He was also trying to arrange time so they can get group tickets and then have discussions afterwards at different people's places. And but yeah, he's also giving warnings that this is pretty gruesome. And after he did it like a couple times, he's also mentioning that some people had to step out of the theater like partway through, and this is too much. Yeah.
Didn't you watch it in the basement now?
Well, I own it if you want
I
another show.
watched it in the church basement, I think. But I mean, I remember it being very gruesome, but that's it. But I think
I don't remember seeing it, but I don't know. You know, different organizations might have shown it for different occasions or something.
I mean, it's horrific, but maybe, especially for those of us that have been raised in the church, we forget the consequences because we can forget that we are. Up here, we say we're sinners, but we don't own it quite the same way as somebody that has truly fallen away, and as gory as it is, seeing that pain and that suffering.
Yeah.
I think
Makes it real.
I think we reflect on our own sins when we see Jesus go through all that, and we feel responsible or guilty or
Yeah, and I'd say that's kind of more historically where Catholicism has come from, where it's trying to manufacture the guilt And that's some of the criticism I have of the movies, that they seem to be emphasizing that a little bit. Yeah, instead of this is guilt, you know, that you're the reason why Jesus had to go through this. It's Jesus did this out of love for you, that he loved you so much that he's willing to endure this on your behalf. Yeah.
Wanted
Okay.
to add here, there are a couple of other movies out also just concentrating on Jesus' birth, you know, historically seen
Yeah.
in that area. And my daughter has these movies and I watch it with them, but when it comes to the arrest of Jesus shortly after, I go away.
Oh,
I have never really seen that part. Okay, I listen to the lyrics and so in the other room, but well, they are not quite as, do not quite have the impact or are as gruesome as Mel Gibson's version.
No, yeah.
You know, so
no, yeah, he really went for it.
yeah, but it brings home to the people what actually happened.
Mhm.
If they do not pay enough attention to hear,
Yeah.
you know, it
Yeah.
kind of shakes you, you know.
Yeah.
It kind
Especially the bit about the scourging, because
Yeah.
in all four gospels they just basically have it as one verse. They don't go into any detail whatsoever. They just say that it happened. And for a first century audience, like they would have a general idea of what goes on there if they haven't witnessed it themselves. But it would be kind of like one of the historical practices, like this, until about the modern age. People went out to view public executions. That was what people did.
yeah.
There's no TV, no beer, no home, no something. So you watch them. Anyway, so the gospel writers, they probably felt like they didn't want to expand on this. You would already know, and they didn't want to explore that area of suffering. Maybe they wanted to explore more the other footsteps that Jesus had towards the cross. Yeah. So they don't exactly emphasize that aspect of the pain. Yeah. Although I was kind of thinking when you were saying, like, movie with birth of Christ and avoiding the arrest, like that, like there's some hymns that kind of bring them together, just to show like he was born for a purpose. So yeah, so because what child is this in the hymn? What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet and Advent sweet, while shepherds watch or keeping. And in the next verse, good Christians fear, for sinners hear, if the silent word is fleeting. Nails, spear shall pierce him through, the cross be borne for me, for you. Okay. Well, actually, there's also a good song by the band Flyleaf. I think it's just titled Christmas Song, and talking about this gentle child, and like there's a couple of lyrics in there where it's talking about, well, what is his purpose, and talking about how this little precious brow made for thorns. Yeah. It comes up in our music.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go. Thank you, Pastor. I have an appointment.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Okay. So let's try to get to verse 2 here. Okay. So Pilate has him flogged, and Pilate himself wouldn't be doing this because he's the governor. Why would he be looking over the punishment of the prisoner? Like, he has guys for that, but the idea would be that, well, maybe he does just want Jesus beaten for the emphasis that this would bring, so that he could say, well, I've already punished this guy, maybe it should be punishment enough, why don't you just let him go? But it seems that his soldiers might have a field day, so they're actually treating this guy as a common criminal. So the soldiers may or may not be acting with approval of Pilate. Who knows? But
But Bible says, then Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. It makes it sound like Pilate flogged him.
you didn't take a direct role in it, no.
No.
One says and had him flogged,
And what?
and had him flogged.
Oh, mine actually says Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. It makes it sound like
Mm,
flogging.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, close enough. Sounds active. Yeah, I think this is one of the cases where ESV is being a more direct translation and NIV is trying to get more of the sense. Because it's active aorist, so it would be that Pilate flogged him. However, like again, Pilate wouldn't be doing this himself. He wouldn't directly be doing it. I
He
think
would
the
be
other,
responsible for
yeah.
for it.
Um, yeah. Yeah. In any case, Pilate himself also being relatively higher up in Roman society, that wouldn't be his job to do the dirty work and get himself bloody. That would be the job of people who were well versed in punishment and execution. So it says here soldiers. And yeah, the soldiers would also be functioning as executioners at different points in time. Say, for example, if you've ever seen the movie Spartacus,
Oh, a long time ago.
yeah. So at the end of the movie, they're crucifying a whole bunch of people, and who would be doing that most? It would be the soldiers. So the soldiers defeated Spartacus's army, spoiler alert, and would have put them on crosses. Well, maybe not that army, maybe they wouldn't be moving them all the way back to Rome, but soldiers would be putting them up on crosses because this would be a massive undertaking for a population. Yeah. Also keep in mind, this is the day and age before police, the standardized police forces. So
Right, still a bit, yeah.
yeah, so you would, unless you have specific guards that you can afford on your own salary, or, well, maybe not salary, but on your own income, you would be relying on the military.
I just wanted to say that coming to the Bible study with you, Pastor, has made me realize even more
Oh, okay.
that Jesus was not only a religious figure whom the Pharisees and that establishment had to fear, but he was much, much more complex, fitting into the history at that time.
Yeah.
And and it is, I think, important to us to take lessons from that into our modern times.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And
As much as we can.
It should be taught in schools.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, there's always debate about like taking prayers out of school and whatnot, and then actually, let's say, allowing Muslim prayer in schools. And anyways, so discussion on prayer, but I think it would also be very useful in school to have an actual class about history of religion and what these religions believe, and of course, if we're actually allowing such a thing to occur, then it wouldn't just be a Christian, exclusively the history of Christianity, like that would be a university course.
Yeah.
But if we could have in schools a course about the history of religions, you have basics of Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism. I don't know if you want to throw Jainism in there, but we have a lot of Sikhs, so Sikhism, Islam, Judaism. Like I think would be beneficial.
Yes.
To actually see these things, especially within a historical context.
Yeah.
And then maybe I won't get so many comments about what, go pray to your sky daddy on on some of my some of the videos that we have online.
And that I think it should be negotiated, maybe through lobbyists at the government level and between the leaders of the various religions, because we have a totally different scenery now
Mm.
in North America compared to 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah,
When I went to grade school, we had the Lord's Prayer said in school every morning,
Yeah.
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 from grade 1 to grade 9.
which is I guess somewhat fitting for the time, because as Canada secularized, because we were an English colony or a British colony, at which point our religion was the national religion of Britain, so Canada was Anglican.
Mhm.
Yeah, you could actively have that everywhere, but as the nations were secularizing, saying that, yeah, we can't bring people into this. Yeah. And I can understand why to a certain extent, because state churches do not really foster faith, but still kind of going the opposite way and saying, well, let's just have religiously neutral spaces. Well, you've already automatically chosen a side by just removing religion, so you're automatically favoring atheists.
It's a very important part of history.
Yeah,
I mean, every society has religion,
yeah,
and it should just be included as that. This
Yeah.
is the honest history
yeah.
and how it connects together.
And that's one of the things I very much appreciated about the movie Contact. Now I know there was a novel that it was actually based on. I haven't read the novel, but the movie Contact. If you're unfamiliar with it, I think this was mid-90s. Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey, if I remember correctly, starring. So there was discovery of an alien signal, and and they found eventually, after piecing apart that signal, that these were blueprints for some kind of massive machinery, and they're like, well, what does this actually do? It could destroy the entirety of the planet, or it could do something that, but they're thinking, well, maybe this is a way to contact them, or to foster interstellar travel, so maybe we can contact them. So they were thinking, okay, well, we need to put somebody in this machine in order to communicate with this alien race we've never seen. And there was a lot of discussion about, well, who do we put in that machine? And one of the main criteria that was brought up, and this is somewhat the tension with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey was a somewhat religious leader. He was a liberal religious leader in the film. And that irks me now when I watched it later as an adult. I didn't notice when I was a kid. But he was speaking on one of the panels trying to examine different candidates. And Jodie Foster's character, who's one of the people who discovered the signal in the first place, she was I wouldn't necessarily call her an atheist. She was more of an agnostic in the movie. And one of the main issues that was going was like, well, over 90% of the world's population believes in some sort of God or higher force. So shouldn't we pick somebody more representative of humanity to place in this machine in order to speak with these aliens? So that was a huge contention within the movie. And one of the major themes that kept going throughout was like, well, what role does religion play in this? Do you actually believe in something beyond these things? And yeah, I don't really want to spoil it, but that also kind of comes into the message with the aliens. Not that the aliens were trying to promote God, but there's the question of, well, do you actually believe this person once they come back and start telling you what's going on? So, question of faith, even with the secularist professions. Now it's just made in the 90s. We've so lost our way. We can't have any of that.
All I remember that movie is time dilation.
Mm.
She went into the machine, came out of the machine in a second.
Yeah. Yeah, because all they saw outside the machine was her going straight through. They didn't see any actual travel. Okay, to slightly spoil it, like they had cameras and everything, so she had a personal camera, and they're like, it just shows static, so we can't believe what you said. They're like, but it has, I don't know, something like 30 hours of static. Oh, so something happened. Anyway, yeah, so there's faith in being made even for a secular claim, and people are very hesitant to accept it without it. Yeah.
If I may mention something here about schools and faith, religion, St. Michael's School. I taught there for a few months, sort of as a substitute. And what I found really not just nice, but well-serving for the students who came from any corner of the world, from any faith group, from any religion, nationality, that we all gathered every Monday morning in the chapel at the campus, and the headmaster addressed everybody in a very general way, and all children, all students came. There was not one student, the headmaster mentioned to me, and he was very proud of that they all attended, no matter where they came from. So their parents actually did not object to that, did not. And they were given every Monday a certain guidance. And I think in a few months that I was just there, that it created a certain atmosphere, and I found that quite positive.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I have a story about St. Michael's that always resonates in my mind when that name comes up, and I'm going off subject here. But across the street from us lived a couple. A lady taught at St. Michael's, and her son was a student there, and came home from school one day, and the house that they lived in was a two-story house. I forgot the details of the inside of it, but he hung himself.
Well,
And his sister came home from school shortly after and found him hanging, and ran across the street to my neighbor to get help. Well, he was, I guess, maybe technically still alive, I'm not sure, but by the time the ambulance came and they got him down, he died. But when you say the name of the school, that memory comes back to me very quickly.
Yeah.
I was at work, but I remember it because Carol was home. She was maybe at university then or whatever, and kind of witnessed all this. Yeah, it was very traumatic for everybody. I don't think you ever forget that.
Unfortunately.
yeah.
There were some students, and this is off subject too, because you mentioned that from Asia. I don't want to mention the country, but far, far away, Far East. And because they were so far away from their families, they were mostly girls, they felt terribly lonely. And we had a special group of teachers that had to spend time with them before we started to talk to them, to find out in how much they could be helped or needed counseling, to get them feeling too isolated and everything. But they too, they came to that Monday morning presentation, and everything. But I guess it's a certain loneliness within all of us that can lead to that. No matter whether you go to St. Michael's or maybe somewhere else, It's unfortunate. Yeah.
Well, yeah, there are some issues going on, like, and even like we're mentioning secularism in schools nowadays, we're seeing that as a problem. But yeah, that doesn't mean that we are completely removed from suffering even back then. Which I guess just kind of shows how much we need Christ, whether it be yesterday or today. And looking at how Jesus tries to take upon himself the suffering that we experience, so that at the very least we have commiseration. At the very best, we have the hope and promise that there is salvation from these things. But yeah, I'm going to end it here because we're already at noon. So unless there's any other thought or question about the biblical text, not necessarily about this, about the schools.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's have a closing prayer. Thank you, Lord God Almighty, that Jesus Christ came into this world to face all types of accusations on our behalf and even rejection. We know, O Lord, that though he was rejected, he came so that he might dwell with us, and for all of us who do receive him, we have the hope and promise of life everlasting. We ask you, O Lord, to also be with all those who are suffering, who are in peril, that they too might have Christ in their lives, so that he might guide them out of these things and join him in the paradise that is to come alongside all of us. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.